Good morning, everyone. Sorry we're running late this morning. I hope you're enjoying this first Sunday of May. We'll begin this morning's service. If you please join in the reading of Sambujo, followed by Jews. Let's see, what did we read last time? Junidai. Sanbutsuge. Let's read Sanbutsuge this morning.
Shoshoke ujindai zennen
쇼무츠 호카이 그진진노 그옹아이 타이무묘 요그누 세손요문인 노시시 진토그무려 그응오나이 지에진묘 고묘 이소 신도다이 생강아사무 자이쇼호 가노쇼지 미풍에 나츠후세조이 가인인 쇼진 요세 삼마이 지에이종오세 동무무 흥야싱안 이사잉응읍 이사다이 안케시음읍 양우센노그만 무료다이 쇼슈뇽오자 그여 이사이시 도쇼뭇 은영은노 켄쇼 그냥 인영오자 쇼무츠 생아이 무흥앙에 무슈세츠노 고묘시 쇼헨시 쇼옥 요세 쇼진 이진난료룡아사무츠 고크노나이이치 고슈키묘도 조조세츠 고쿠뇨나이 온니무토소 가토 아이민노 나츠이사이 지포라이쇼 신네츠 쇼조 이통아 고쿤케라 구완논 고무츠 신묘 쟁아신쇼 호승한 노히링키쇼쇼역 진모세손 지에무에 요려시손 징아싱요 계려신시 쇼크노크축 망여쇼진 닌즈흥이 If you please join now in the reading of the Golden Chain. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namanda. Good Good morning, Dharma School students. Hope you're. Am I hearing an echo? What did I do different this morning? Are we still hearing? No, it went away, huh? Okay, all right. So again, good morning, Dharma School students. So I wanted to answer a question from this list of questions that actually came to us in February. And this question is from Jordan Matsushima, a sixth grader. And the question is, how long have you been at this church? A long time. We've been here since 1986. So it was the last century that we arrived. Boy, that sounds weird, huh? Last century. This century, we're already into the 21st year of this century, when we were about to change from the 1900s to the 2000s. There was a lot of concern about things that may go wrong with everything from the internet to social upheaval. There were a lot of concerns that people had when we changed into the year 2000. But we have survived. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Well, hopefully the end of a pandemic, nearing the end of a pandemic. There has been so much hardship this past year because of that. And we are looking forward to a time when we can once again gather together in the presence of our families and friends. But we began here. We came in 1986. We were, before coming here, we were at the White River Buddhist temple. And we spent about 7 years there in Washington, the state of Washington. And both our daughters were born there in Renton, which is a larger town outside of the town that we were in, which is Auburn, Washington. The White River Buddhist temple was a very small temple. And it still is a temple that has about maybe 100 families that are a part of the membership of the White River Buddhist Temple. Well, while we were there, it was a wonderful time. There were farms still that members were farmers and grew row crops, lettuce, and what else were they growing? Onions. There were berry growers, strawberries and raspberries, and they were just beginning to start shipping to places like in the East Coast that these produce that they were growing were being considered commodities that they were able to ship to different parts of the country. And when we left White River Buddhist Temple and arrived here, we came with our dog, and who else was that? We had cats. Callie, I think, was one of them, and Dabby. Yeah, so our dog was a golden retriever who we named Blue. And Blue came down with us, kind of a floppity golden retriever that came down with us from the Northwest. But it's been 35 years now since we arrived in San Jose, and there have been certainly many, many changes that have occurred in the past 35 years. When we think about all of the changes that take place in our lives, sometimes we don't really recognize those changes until we start to think about what is taking place around us. We become so used to things moving and flowing and new things coming up, old things going away. Even the route that I normally take to go home from the Betsuin goes through so many changes that have taken place over the past three and a half decades. But it was 35 years ago that we arrived here in San Jose, and we have enjoyed being here as a family here in San Jose. So 35 years ago. Now I have a question for students. The question is, why do we bow? When we enter the Hondo, we bow when we enter the Hondo. When we pass in front of Onaijin, Amida Buddha, Shinran, Renyo, Seven Patriarchs, Shotoku, when we pass, we bow. When we do Oshoko, when we come forward to do Oshoko, we put our hands together and we bow. Why do we bow? So you can email your answers or have Ms. Kawamoto collect your answers, and we'll take a look and see how well your Dharma school teachers, or how good students you are. There is a saying, when there is a student, a teacher will arise. If there's no student, there can be really no teacher. There can be a person who has a lot of information and wants to share that information, but without a student, there is no teacher. And certainly without a student, without a teacher, you can have a student wanting to learn something, but unable to learn. And a teacher can be anything, can be anyone. A teacher can be something that is an object maybe in your room that might remind you of a person or an experience that you had, that when you reflect upon may mean something to you. Or a teacher, of course, we think of teachers as people who share their information with us. So we'll learn maybe from one another. If we don't know why we bow, we can ask our teachers. Our teachers can have an understanding that they can share with you. Or maybe you already know and you can share that with your fellow students and your teacher. So my question to you, why do we bow? Why do we bow? Okay, thank you very much. If you please join in Gassho and Nembutsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much, everyone. Go to class. Good morning. Welcome to this morning service on this first Sunday of the month of May. It's beautiful weather outside, and I am enjoying that. Coming in to the office early in the morning, where it's very quiet and able to take in this beautiful day. But that's not unlike a lot of us who we're starting to kind of get outdoors a little bit, starting to be able to enjoy some of the things that we were able to do before the pandemic. But as we do those things, we need to be careful, still socially distant, wear our masks, and so that we can truly make it through this very difficult time and continue to enjoy our family and friends and being able to gather together. Especially for us here, to gather together again here in the Hondo. Let's begin this morning's service. If you please join in the reading of Sambujo and the reading of Sanbutsuge. Namanda, namanda, namandas, namanda, namanda.
つまに主公遠慮開室音平有脈樹木如来予言調整無臨小学内音コルジポ開門精進三昧知恵意徳無量主生慶雲神大前年小仏法界具人人の空語外体無明欲ぬ世尊用無人の死死人徳無量空君語内知恵人妙光明一層神道大戦願が三仏在所法可動生じ未不下脱不正上位戒人精進如是三昧知恵以上我世同無分業心願一切空空一切大安慶始無無百千億万無量大小主如我者空有一切知と書物不良具の検証不逆頻尿語者小仏戦愛不分愛無主説の法名師匠変師匠語如是精進一人難量量が三仏国の第一五種奇妙道場上説国如内音任務闘争がと愛民ドーナツ一切実法来生心熱症状意図が国慶楽安穏法仏神妙善が心象発願の日臨意少々欲人も生存知恵無限上領子孫知が信用軽量心心諸君の空中画行精進人情 Namanda, Namandams, Namanda, 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 Namanda.
Oh, I didn't change the the camera angle. I'm sorry, but hopefully you joined in the reading of Sambujo and Sanbutsuge. Now, the Sanbutsuge again comes from the larger Pure Land Sutra. It is the Bodhisattva Dharmakara before his teacher, the Buddha Lokeshvara praising the virtues of Lokeshvara. And following this gatha, Dharmakara asks Lokeshvara for his help to fulfill this aspiration that he has to provide for the enlightenment of all beings. And that enlightenment is not some object out there or some goal out there. It's really the resolution. It's a way of experiencing life, resolving the difficulties that we cause and experience by cultivating a mind that sees things as they are. And Dharmakara vows before Lokeshvara Raja to find a way in which all beings might be able to resolve the difficulties that we cause and experience. In the first chapter of the Kyogyo Shinsho, Shinran writes, Shakyamuni appeared in this world and expounded the teachings of the way to enlightenment, seeking to save the multitudes of living beings by blessing them with this benefit that is true and real. Thus, to teach the Tathagata's primal vow is the true intent of this sutra, and the name of the Buddha is its essence. And that's from the this collected works of Shinran from his major work, the Kyogyo Shinsho, and it is the beginning of the first chapter of the Kyogyo Shinsho, which deals with the teachings of or Shinran's understanding of the teachings of the Buddha. So, Shakyamuni Buddha's appearance from Shinran's understanding was solely to talk about a way in which we can resolve these difficulties. And that in the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha is Amida Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha describing and sharing with us Amida Buddha, that through Amida Buddha's primal vow, we are all able to resolve these difficulties. So at the core, again, of the teachings of the Buddha is this very simple idea, the resolution of the difficulties that we cause and experience. Sometimes we want to know other things, which is fine. We ask questions and try to put things in perspective, and we try to give some context to things. And so we ask questions, and we think about, and we try to put these things together. In our Sangha Padma class this morning, or the past couple of weeks, trying to put the historical context of Shinran in place, so that we can understand how Shinran might have been influenced by the world in which he lived. And that world was not very much unlike what we are experiencing today. We're tied down now in this pandemic that has taken so many lives, and it continues to affect many, many people in other parts of the world. Things seem to be settling down here. We hopefully will be able to see the end of this pandemic, the effects of this pandemic within our communities, but are still certainly concerned about what is taking place in other parts of the world, places like, of course, India and Brazil, other places where the virus seems to be returning or surging in tremendous numbers of individuals infected by the virus. We've had social unrest these past many months, and important issues that are being brought into our conversation are talking about the injustices that have existed, that have not been resolved, that continue to injure those who are held within those kind of social structures that continue to discriminate, continue to hold down people unable to break free, to truly participate in this, in our communities, in our society as equals. In Shinnan's time, not the same scale, but no less powerful influences in his life. With the wars that were taking place, the famine that was often a part of their lives, as Shinni describes, at least two of these famines that swept through the country, killing many people. And again, the social unrest, the transition of power from the imperial household and its supporting families to the military government that was being established in Kamakura. So the shift in political power within that same time frame of Shinnan's life, trying to understand that context, and in understanding that context, to understand how Shinnan, what Shinnan's life was like, and how he may have arrived at his understanding, and what pushed him in the direction of his understanding, kind of exploring that context that Shinnan lived in. When we talk about Buddhism, it's all of these things that are going on around us. It's not just some understanding outside of this context. But as we think about all of the things that are going on around us, how we understand that in relationship to our life is important. Whether we choose to follow one line of questioning, or whether we choose to follow another line of questioning, or if following any line of questioning will lead to understanding, will lead to some insight into who we are as human beings and how we relate to the world around us. And this isn't a a new kind of phenomena, a new question, we are always kind of trying to investigate, trying to find out more about the world in which we live. But unless those inquiries somehow lead us, at least within Buddhism, lead us to a better understanding of ourselves in the context of this world, it's really kind of effort or attention that is drawn away from what is important in Buddhism. Shakyamuni Buddha was approached by Malunkyaputta. Malunkyaputta? I'm not sure that's being pronounced well. Right, but it's in a sutta, a story that is contained within the teachings of the Buddha. And this is entitled, and I really like this, the title of this, is Questions Which Tend Not to Edification. Questions which tend not to edification. I'm not sure what they mean, what that means, but that's the name of this this portion of this lesser Malunkyaputta Sutta. Malunkyaputta was a disciple, a student of Shakyamuni Buddha, and he was meditating and he was thinking about his experiences, thinking about his practice, and suddenly he began to think also about questions that he wanted to ask Shakyamuni Buddha. And he was able to eventually meet Shakyamuni Buddha, and as a disciple, he told Shakyamuni Buddha, you know, if you can, I will continue to be a student of yours if you can answer these questions for me. And if you cannot answer these questions or are unwilling to answer these questions, then I will leave the Sangha. And these questions, there are 14 of them, but in the Pali Canon, 10 are listed, and they're kind of a combination of all 14. But the questions are kind of not categorized, but they're listed in the following way in the Pali Canon. The questions are: the world is eternal, or the world is not eternal. The world is infinite, the world is not infinite. The being imbued with a life force is identical with the body. The being imbued with a life force is not identical with the body. The Tathagata, a perfectly enlightened being, exists after death. The Tathagata does not exist after death. The Tathagata both exists and not exists after death. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. So Malunkyaputta felt that these were important questions that he needed to have answered. And so he asked the Buddha and said to the Buddha that if you are unwilling or unable to answer these questions, then I will leave the Sangha. And Shakyamuni Buddha said to Malunkyaputta, he said, I have never said that I would answer these questions for you. And there's apparently within these stories of Shakyamuni Buddha, he was often asked these kinds of questions, and he just never answered them. He simply kept silent. And so it's not as if Malunkyaputta suddenly kind of thought of these questions. There must have been other occasions where questions similar to this were posed to Shakyamuni Buddha. And so Shakyamuni Buddha said, well, okay, when you became a disciple, I did not say that I would answer these questions. And whether you would like to remain a member of the Sangha, will not, I won't ask these answer these questions if you choose to leave. And he then went on to give the parable of the poison arrow, which is a story that should be familiar to many of us. It's a story where Shakyamuni gives as an example to Malinkyapucha. And he says, if a person is shot with a poison arrow, what should he do? Should he ask, where did the arrow come from? What kind of poison is on the arrow? Who shot the arrow? What clan did he belong to? And ask all of these kinds of questions. By the time he received answers to these questions, he would be dead. And Malonkyaputra said, yeah, you should remove the arrow, take care of the wound, take care of the poison that is now in his body. And so Shakyamuni Buddha said, likewise, even if I answer these questions which you've asked me, you're still in samsara. It's not going to make you any closer to what is central to the teachings. It's not going to resolve the difficulties that we cause and experience. And so that was the end of this questions which tend not to edification. Google it. You'll have a great time. There's a lot of... So, Malonkyaputa Sutra. Malonkyaputa is the name of the student. And he asks these questions of Shakyamuni Buddha. It's important that we do ask questions. It's important that we try to understand the context of our lives, what's affecting us, how are we responding to the world. What is it? Is what I'm being presented with an accurate, clear representation of what is there? Can we understand what is true and real? Are we able to discern, distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad? Are we able to do these kinds of investigations as we look at the world around us? You know, this is something for a very long time. I've been listening to KQED in the radio, and years ago, the family came into the car. Whoever was driving the car would know who was the last one to drive the car because it was KQED on the radio. But recently, this past week, I've been driving without listening to the radio, to KQED. I know that sounds, we're members, so we do support KQED, but it sounds so different from what I've been doing for such a long time. But part of the reason that I felt that maybe I should take a break from listening to a news channel is that listening to the news brings information in. Information that, I feel relatively good about, the information that I'm receiving and reading news feeds. But the information that I'm receiving is simply information. And although I can think about what I'm hearing, there's no way to interact with that information. It's just constant stream of information into me, into my head. That there's no way for me to, I can look at other sources and correlate and see if there is any discrepancies or see. But then if there's differences, how will I know which is right, which is correct, or which is not correct, right or wrong? How do I determine? And we know with conspiracy theories that seem so powerful nowadays, how do I determine what is accurate, what is correct and true? We depend upon, so much upon other views, other perspectives. There's no way for me to go and validate any of that information. Even as I participate in dialogue with others, how do I validate? How do I determine what I'm hearing, what I'm experiencing is true and real? And in a way, it's those questions that Malankya-Putya had for Shakyamuni Buddha. How do I know this? How do I know that? What is it? Is this true? Is that true? Listening to these things created more questions. And the response to those questions, or at least how I tried to make sense of these questions, began to get smaller and smaller, unable to determine whether this was accurate, this was true. So, as my uncertainty kind of grew, I felt it necessary to kind of draw back. And that seems the opposite, right? If you're uncertain, go out and get more information, go out and do more things, get out and talk more. But there's, how do you validate any of that? And I think the words of Shakyamuni Buddha were, even if you answer all of those questions, you're still here with the same original problem of Shakyamuni Buddha that Shakyamuni Buddha poses. How do we resolve the difficulties that we cause and experience? And Shakyamuni Buddha suggests that those difficulties result from how we see the world, that shapes the way that we engage the world. So, Malankya-Buddha's questions may be specifically about where do we come from, where do we go to, is it eternal, is it not eternal? It may seem philosophical or these kind of big questions, but they are the questions that I too kind of have, maybe not so grand, but the same kinds of questions I have. How do we address the difficulties that we are experiencing in our communities, in our culture and society? What is it that we might be able to contribute to work toward a world in which all beings might feel safe, that all beings can be happy, as expressed in the Metta Sutta. What might I be able to do? And so returning to this very basic core idea in Buddhism, that the difficulties that we cause and experience result from our inability to see things as they are. And in Jodo Shinshu, acknowledging that, we realize the importance of the Bodhisattva's vow. Shakyamuni Buddha tells us about the Bodhisattva Dharmakara who vows before his teacher, the Buddha Lokeshvara Raja. as is expressed in this Sanbutsuge, which we read, and the Jusege, which we often read, that the Bodhisattva Dhammakara vows before his teacher to provide a means through which all beings might resolve the difficulties that we cause and experience. Understanding my limitations, acknowledging the limitations that I have, I appreciate more fully the assurance of Amida Buddha that provides for the enlightenment of a person like me. And all of my limitations, my finiteness, even though I do pursue these kinds of, I don't know, useless questions, but being occupied so much by issues and thoughts and questions that may or may not tend to edification. When all those questions are answered, where am I? Has anything changed? Have I changed? And it is that I that changes that can be transformed through the assurance of Amida Buddha. Shinran describes how broken tile and bits of rubble are transformed into gold through the compassion of Amida Buddha. It's not that it becomes more valuable. It's simply that which was there now in its same state is transformed, is changed. What was thought to be simply something to be discarded has value. How we see the world, how we think about ourselves in the context of that world, in the world in which we live, can change us, can change the way that we engage the world. And it may not be on a grand scale. It may be simply on a day-to-day, every day, doing things in family, with friends. Nothing revolutionary, but transforming the world in which we live from samsara to nirvana, changing bits of rubble into gold. The compassion of Amida Buddha, expressed through our actions, can change the world. And we respond and we say, Namo Amida Butsu, in gratitude and appreciation. Malunka Buddha's questions are specific, but they kind of generally characterize the busyness with which we engage the world. And if we can recognize that, then the things that we do can then have substance and meaning. And it could be anything. It could be being involved in community. It could be doing things for your neighbor. It could be many things, could be everything. But the way that we see that is now different, is changed. The way that we engage the world is through our understanding of the finiteness and limited in our own actions and the assurance of Amida Buddha that provides for the enlightenment of all beings. Shakyamuni Buddha, in his response to these questions, said, even if I answer these questions, you're still here. You're still in samsara. Unless these questions somehow change you, change the way that you see the world. It's kind of useless. I think coming back, not so much withdrawing, because I'm still engaged in things, but thinking about things differently has been challenging, as has been for many of us these past few weeks. Very difficult to kind of bring our thoughts together, to converse, to express, to share those thoughts. I think by kind of coming back again, to be quiet, to sit, not literally sit, but to sit quietly, to think about how we view the world, how I see the world. It's kind of like those monkeys in a tree. Shakyamuni Buddha said, our minds are like monkeys in a tree, jumping from branch to branch. To be able to settle ourselves, for me to be able to settle me, will be something that I will think about, consider. The Nembutsu, Namamida Butsu, is simply expressing gratitude and appreciation. That regardless of where we are, regardless of our abilities or skills or our understanding, our capabilities, regardless of any of that, the assurance of Amida Buddha provides for the enlightenment of all beings, and we are indeed, I am indeed truly grateful for that. Okay, thank you very much for spending time again on this Sunday morning or whenever you view this. Thank you for participating. We want to thank Matt Ogawa and Devin Matsumoto for last week's conversation on a response to the hatred that is out in our community. And one of the things that Matt said was, and he's heard this from others, from Duncan Williams, who has said this many times, that no matter if the beings are innumerable, infinite, that I will work to move all from samsara into nirvana. That's the vow of the Bodhisattva. And I think how we see the world, if we can have that same spirit of helping others, not through compassion and kindness, that we can lift the world to alleviate, to end the hatred that continues to be so powerful in our lives. But I want to thank Matt Ogawa and Devin Matsumoto again for that conversation. Thank you everyone for your participation. Please remember, we are trying to increase the number of people who subscribe to this channel. We want to reach 1,000. Seems kind of, I don't know, but we're trying to reach 1,000 so that we can do some things with our YouTube channel. So please hit that subscribe button. And if you are Spanish speaking, and are willing to maybe think about or work with us about Buddhism in Spanish, please contact the office, let us know. And I'm not sure where we'll go with this, but if we are able to kind of put some resources together, maybe we can begin to share the Dharma in Spanish. We do live in a community and in a nation that's more and more Spanish speaking. That was here in California was Spanish speaking. And of course, before that, as Devin pointed out, was Olone. So, but in between there, with Spanish speaking people, perhaps we can begin to share the Dharma through that language as well. Again, thank you very much, everyone. As we bring this service to a close, will you please join in Gassho and Sanbutsuge. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. See you next week.